a Massachusetts judge is demanding to see what ExxonMobil knew about climate change for the past few decades. Now, Raw Story is reporting that Judge Heidi Brieger has refused to excuse ExxonMobil from a request by the state's Attorney General to hand over decades worth of documents on its views about climate change. Now, presumably, of course, those documents would show that ExxonMobil had been misleading its shareholders and the world, of course, about what it knew about climate change from its own investigations. Now, this decision that was handed down by Massachusetts Superior Court Judge Brieger was first brought there by State Attorney General Maura Healey. Now, Maura Healey has, of course, been investigating ExxonMobil's climate policies. Now, of course, following this decision, Healey tweeted out, quote, "This order affirms our longstanding authority to investigate fraud. ExxonMobil must come clean about what it knew about climate change." Now, of course, Healey is one of two state prosecutors, the other, of course, being the prosecutor in New York, investigating whether or not ExxonMobil knowingly misled its shareholders and the public as to what it knew about the issue of climate change. Now, the investigation followed separate reports, and I've got some excerpts from one of them here by news publication Inside Climate News and the LA Times, basically showing that ExxonMobil knew about climate change and worked to play down the risks despite its own scientists and its own funding to create climate models and do research on this, finding that climate change is an actual issue. Now, again, I want to read you some of this report so that you get some context here. And if you want to read the whole report, Inside Climate News has it. It's a long but fascinating read. I'll put the link in the description of this video. Now, this is from Neela Banjari, Lisa Song, and David Hosmeyer. Now, they investigated for Inside Climate News, and what they found is that they wrote about how back in 1977, a senior company scientist named James F. Black had addressed an audience of very powerful oil executives. Now, in this presentation, he told them, hey, look, carbon dioxide from the world's use of fossil fuels will warm the planet and eventually endanger humanity. He said, in the first place, there is a general scientific agreement that the most likely manner in which mankind has influenced the global climate is through carbon dioxide released from the burning of fossil fuels. Now, he did this in 1977, and a year later, Black, a top technical expert in Exxon's Research and Engineering Division, took an updated version of this presentation and took it to another, more broad audience. Now, he basically warned Exxon scientists and managers that independent researchers estimated a doubling of the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere would increase the average global temperatures by 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, or 4 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and as much as 10 degrees Celsius at the poles. Now, he said that rainfall might get heavier in some regions, while other regions turn to desert. Now, he said specifically some countries would benefit, but others would have their agricultural output reduced or destroyed. So that's part of his 1978 talk that he pretty much presented to scientists at ExxonMobil. Now, after that presentation, that kicked ExxonMobil in the ass, and they decided to do their own investigations. Now, this writes, Exxon's ambitious program included both empirical CO2 sampling and rigorous climate modeling. It assembled a brain trust that would spend more than a decade deepening the company's understanding of an environmental problem that posed an existential threat to their own business. So it was in their own business interest to look at basically what's making their company even possible to exist, the burning of fossil fuels, and see what kind of impact they're having on the planet. Now, Exxon's research also laid the groundwork for a 1982 corporate primer on CO2 and climate change prepared by its own Environmental Affairs Office. Now, this primer was marked not to be distributed externally. Now, this contained information that has been given wide circulation to Exxon management. In it, the company recognized, despite the many lingering unknowns, that heading off global warming would require major reductions in fossil fuel combustion, meaning that they knew that they were adding to climate change. They knew. And the primer said, unless you reduce the level of fossil fuel combustion and consumption, that there's potentially catastrophic events that must be considered. Once the effects are measurable, they might not be reversible. And so this is the point that where we're at now. So again, these scientists that are working at ExxonMobil, using their own funding, are saying, hey, climate change, bit of an issue here. We need to do something about it. And again, they were throwing so much money at doing all of this research. It was their own research. It wasn't someone else's. Now, but even while funding this, they were so cautious about what they told their shareholders. Quote, corporate executives remain cautious about what they told Exxon shareholders about global warming and the role petroleum played in causing it. A review of federal filings shows the company did not elaborate on the carbon problem in annual reports filed with securities regulators during the height of its CO2 research. Nor did it mention in those filings that concern over CO2 was beginning to influence business decisions that it was making. And that, of course, is just one of the reports from Inside Climate News. And that's what we're looking at here. And that's what this whole suit is about. That's what this whole decision is about. Thanks to investigative reporting by the LA Times and Inside Climate News, we now have a strong case to make that ExxonMobil knowingly hid their research from their shareholders and shelved their climate research so they can keep doing business. Business as usual, man. That's what they're about. Even knowing that they're contributing to climate change, not just by pumping and selling oil, but by, in the later 80s, lobbying against clean alternative forms of energy and trying to hide their findings in order to save their business model. And see, this is the fraud. This is the con that has ended up being pulled on all of us. It's pretty clear that ExxonMobil knew. And now, thankfully, thanks to this Massachusetts governor and this judge, we're going to get the documentation, the full documentation to prove just how much they knew and when. So, again, good journalism actually wins and actually does what it's supposed to. It finds out the truth. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent, non-corporate media, go to our Patreon page and become a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation.